My brother-in-law stole $184,000 from his own father's company, and he ran the back half of it through my LLC, my name, my accounts, my reputation, without me ever knowing. Here's exactly how that happened and what I did about it. My name is Marcus. I'm 34. I run a small architectural drafting consultancy out of Denver, solo operation, just me and a couple of freelance contractors I pull in when a big job lands. I built that LLC from scratch in 2019 after leaving a firm downtown. Took 18 months to land my first steady client. Every late night, every skipped vacation, every argument with my wife Diane about money during the lean years, all of it is in that company. That LLC is my name, my reputation, my whole professional identity. Diane and I have been married 6 years. She's the middle child of the Hartley family, and the Hartleys run a specialty tile and flooring business called Hartley Stone Supply. Her father, Gerald, started it out of a warehouse in 1989. Now it's a real operation, 3 locations, around 40 employees, annual revenue north of $4 million. When Gerald got a hip replacement in 2021, he needed someone to step in and manage day-to-day finances while he recovered. He asked his son, Diane's older brother, my brother-in-law. Preston Hartley, 38 years old, accounting degree, some bookkeeping experience, very good at talking about cash flow at dinner. Gerald trusted him completely. Said Preston had the head for numbers. I liked Preston. I want to be honest about that. We weren't close, but we got along fine, watched football together. He came to the small dinner I threw at a steakhouse to celebrate my LLC's first anniversary, just family. I paid the whole bill, $312, and I was proud to do it. Preston gave a toast, said he was proud of me for betting on myself. I remember thinking he was a decent guy. Over the next 2 years, he'd ask me casual questions about how I tracked expenses, what software I used, how I handled quarterly filings. I thought he was just trying to modernize Hartley Stone's bookkeeping. I gave him a walkthrough of my entire accounting setup, showed him invoice templates, told him what I paid for my payroll service. I was being helpful. I didn't know he was taking notes for a completely different reason. The discovery happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March, completely by accident. My accountant, Rita, called me at 2:47 in the afternoon. I remember the time because I was about to leave for a site visit. She said she was doing preliminary prep for my Q1 filings and had a question about some transactions she didn't recognize. She sent me a PDF while we were still on the phone. 17 transactions, all incoming, all from a vendor account associated with Hartley Stone Supply. Amounts ranging from $3,200 to $11,400. They'd all hit my LLC's business checking account between January 2022 and October 2023. Total, $94,700. I sat down on the edge of my desk and stared at the screen. I had never invoiced Hartley Stone for anything, never done a single job for them, never received payment from them and recorded it. These transactions had come in under a category my former bookkeeper, a guy I'd used for 8 months before switching to Rita, had labeled miscellaneous consulting revenue. They looked plausible. The amounts fit consulting work. Nobody asked questions. Rita asked if I wanted her to dig back further. She found 4 more transactions from late 2021, another $31,600. Total across everything, $126,300, money that had passed through my accounts over roughly 28 months. Money I had never earned, never invoiced, never knew existed. I told Rita to stop everything and not file anything. Then I called my lawyer, Dev, before I even called Diane. Dev told me to pull every bank statement I had and not touch anything. He also gave me the number of a forensic accountant named Sandra, who was available the next morning. I spent that night at my desk going through every document I could access. I did not sleep. I drank about a pot of coffee. Diane knew something was wrong. I told her I had a financial discrepancy I was sorting out and needed a day before I could explain it properly. She's a good wife. She didn't push. She brought me a sandwich at midnight and went to bed. I sat there until the sun came up, bank statements spread across the desk, a yellow legal pad filling up with notes, a particular kind of dread sitting in my chest that I've never felt before or since. Sandra spent 2 days going through everything. What she found was methodical, precise, the kind of thing someone planned. Here's what Preston had done. Starting in late 2021, he was skimming money from Hartley Stone's operating accounts. He'd create a fake vendor invoice, sometimes for consulting services, sometimes for design review, sometimes for logistics coordination. He'd process the payment through Hartley Stone's accounts payable system, which he had full access to as acting financial manager. The money would go out looking like a legitimate vendor payment. Where did it go? Into an intermediary account Preston controlled. Then from that account, it moved to my LLC's business checking, routed to look like payment for architectural or drafting consulting work, which was entirely plausible given what my company actually did for other clients. From my LLC's account, the money sat. Then at irregular intervals it moved again out of my account through what looked like normal contractor expense withdrawals. Preston had gotten access to my old bookkeeper's login credentials. Sandra found evidence he'd added himself as an authorized user at a secondary access level sometime in mid-2021, right around when I gave him that walkthrough of my accounting software. My old bookkeeper never noticed. I never noticed. So the trail looked like this. Hartley Stone pays my LLC for consulting. My LLC pays out to contractors. Those contractor payments go to shell accounts Preston controls. If anyone audited Hartley Stone, the money appeared to go to a legitimate outside vendor, me. If anyone audited me, the income appeared to come from a real client, Hartley Stone. The exit looked like normal business expenses, clean on both sides. I was the middle of the laundry, I just didn't know it. On Thursday morning, with Sandra's preliminary report in my hand, I drove to Preston's house. Did not call ahead. He opened the door in a fleece vest and cargo pants. He looked surprised to see me. Then he looked at my face. Then he looked like a man who knows. I said, "Come sit down with me right now." We sat at his kitchen table. I put Sandra's report in front of him, just the summary page with the $126,300 total highlighted. I watched his face. He tried the confusion act for about 15 seconds. Then I said, "Preston, I have a forensic accountant and a lawyer, don't." He went quiet, then he said, "I was going to pay it back. I was always going to pay it back." I said, "You used my company, my LLC, my name." He started talking about his divorce 2 years earlier, the settlement, a property deal that went bad, how he'd needed time. I let him talk. Every word was going into the notes I was keeping on my phone under the table. At some point his voice broke. He pressed his knuckles against his mouth and stared at the window. I watched his face and recognized what was happening. He was calculating. How much sympathy could he generate? How far contrition might get him? I had seen that quality in him before at family dinners when he was steering the conversation toward himself. I just never had the context to name it until that moment. Then he said the thing I still think about. He leaned forward and said, "No one got hurt, Marcus. The business is fine. You were never going to get in trouble because I controlled everything." I picked up the report, stood up, and left. By Friday morning, my phone was going nonstop. Diane's mother, Carol, called at 8:10. She said she'd heard there was some kind of financial misunderstanding and hoped I wasn't going to blow this out of proportion. I asked her what she thought $126,000 was proportionate to. She said Preston was going through a hard time. Diane's aunt, Roberta, who lives in Colorado Springs and inserts herself into every family situation she can find, sent me a text saying, "The family needs to handle this internally," and asking if destroying everything Gerald built was what I wanted on my conscience. The family group chat, a thing called Hartley Crew that I'd been added to when I married Diane, started moving around 9 in the morning. Diane's cousin Brett, a guy I had never once had a meaningful conversation with, wrote, "So Marcus is really considering getting lawyers involved over a business dispute with his own family?" 2 question marks. I counted. Then Carol posted a long message about how Gerald's health couldn't take this kind of stress. Gerald, for the record, had not contacted me directly at any point. Diane was caught in the middle of all of this, and it was genuinely hard to watch. She sat at the kitchen table with her phone in her hands and kept exhaling slowly. She had seen Sandra's report. She knew what Preston had done. But these were also her people, and the pressure coming at her was enormous. She looked at me and said, "I believe you. I'm on your side. I just need you to know how hard this is for me." That was enough. That was all I needed. Meanwhile, Dev called that afternoon with news that made everything worse. The $126,000 that had passed through my LLC had been partially reported as income on my taxes. My old bookkeeper had logged some of it as revenue, which meant I had paid taxes on money I never actually kept. and the portions that weren't reported created a separate exposure issue. My LLC had a tax problem because of Preston. Dev said we needed to file an amended return and pursue voluntary disclosure, and we needed to do it fast. That process cost me $4,800 in legal and accounting fees right out of the gate, before I'd recovered a single dollar. Then Sandra called with the second wave. She had kept digging because I'd asked her to go back as far as the records went. Preston had become acting financial manager in April 2021. Sandra found activity starting in July 2021, 3 months in. He had started within 90 days of Gerald handing him the keys. And the total wasn't $126,000. Sandra found a second routing path that didn't use my LLC at all. Preston had created a fake vendor account for a company called Rocky Peak Distributions, a non-existent equipment supplier. Same method, fake invoices, real payments out of Hartley Stone. This channel had moved another $58,000 between October 2021 and February 2022, before he'd even started using my company. Grand total stolen from Hartley Stone Supply, $184,300. My LLC had been used as the laundry for the back half. The full scope of what Preston had done to the family business was nearly double what I'd originally found. I drove to Gerald's house Saturday morning. Just me. No Dev, no Sandra, just me and a folder of documents. Gerald Hartley is 67. Big guy, broad shoulders, the kind of man who shakes hands like he's testing a grip. He looked healthy, the hip was fully recovered. He had no idea what was coming. I sat with him at his dining room table and put Sandra's full report in front of him. I gave him time to read it. I said nothing. Halfway through, he set the papers down and rubbed his face with both hands. The kitchen was quiet except for the refrigerator and a neighbor's lawn mower outside. Gerald stared at the table for a long time. When he looked up, his expression wasn't anger or disbelief. It was exhausted recognition, like a man confirming something he'd been quietly afraid of for longer than he wanted to admit. I said, "I'm not going to let this land on me, Gerald. I need you to understand that." He said, "I know, son, I know." He reached across and rested his hand on the folder, not to take it, just to rest his hand on it. Then he straightened up and said, "Tell me what you need from me. No pushback. No, be patient with Preston. No family first. Just tell me what you need." I drove home feeling, for the first time since that Tuesday afternoon phone call, like the ground was solid. That was the moment the family's unified front cracked, because Gerald was the one everyone actually listened to. Here's what I did in the 2 weeks after that meeting. Dev sent a formal demand letter to Preston for $126,300, the amount that had moved through my LLC, plus the $4,800 in legal and accounting costs I'd already paid. 14 days to respond with a repayment plan, or we filed a civil suit. I had Dev notify Hartley Stone's business attorney of the full $184,000 figure, including the Rocky Peak channel. That attorney had an obligation to Gerald and the company. What happened with the other $58,000 was between Preston and Hartley Stone, not between Preston and me. I was just making sure they had the truth. I contacted my bank, had Preston's access to my LLC accounts fully revoked and audited, changed every login, changed the account numbers. The bank's fraud department opened their own case file. I left the Hartley Crew group chat. I texted Carol directly and said I wasn't interested in discussing this in a family forum, that I had done nothing wrong, and that I would not be accepting contact from anyone except Diane and Gerald until the legal matter was resolved. Then I blocked Roberta's number, because I did not need Colorado Springs in my life. Brett sent me a direct message. "Congrats on destroying the family business, man. Hope it was worth it." I read it, did not respond, and blocked him. Joe, Diane's maid of honor and Preston's ex-girlfriend from college, because yes, they were all tangled up like that, texted Diane 3 times that week asking her to get me to give Preston a private chance to make it right. Diane eventually replied with one sentence, "I support my husband." Joe didn't text again after that. The pressure from the family quieted down fast once they realized I wasn't going to engage. That kind of pressure depends on you reacting. Once I stopped reacting, they had nothing to work with. Preston responded to the demand letter on day 11. He didn't admit to anything in writing. Clearly he'd talked to a lawyer, but he proposed $2,000 a month until the full amount was paid. At that rate, that's 65 months, over 5 years. Then I found out he had sold his Harley, probably worth $14,000, 3 days after I'd shown up at his door. He'd also listed his ski gear on a resale site. He was liquidating. I told Dev to counter at $4,500 a month. If Preston balked, we'd file. He accepted $4,000 a month, 29 months to pay it off, and he had to put up the equity in his truck as collateral, documented and signed. The repayment agreement was executed with both lawyers present on a Wednesday morning in April. Preston sat across the conference table from me and did not look at me once during the entire signing. He just put his signature on everything that was put in front of him. Hartley Stone's attorney separately worked out a deal with Preston for the other $58,000. I don't know all the details. It wasn't my business. What I know is that Preston resigned from the company immediately. Gerald brought in an outside CFO on a part-time contract and had the books fully audited by an outside firm. That audit cost Hartley Stone $22,000, which the company listed as damages in their internal case against Preston. The family situation took longer to sort out than the legal one. Carol came around about 2 months after the repayment agreement was signed. She called Diane, not me, which was fine, and apologized for the way things were handled at the beginning. I didn't need a direct apology from Carol. It was enough. Roberta has never said a word to me. She still exists in Colorado Springs. Good for her. Brett eventually sent me a message on a Saturday night. I didn't have the whole story. Sorry, man. 5 words of actual apology buried in 7. I'll take it. I unblocked him. Gerald took Diane and me to dinner in June, the 4 of us at a place downtown, the kind of dinner where you order the good steak. Halfway through the meal he said, "You did right, Marcus. I'm sorry it came at you the way it did." That was the end of it for me. Preston has made 7 payments so far. He's current. I don't know what his life looks like, and I genuinely don't think about it much. He lost his position at the family business. He had to liquidate assets. His relationship with his father, from what Diane tells me, is distant and formal now. He did that to himself. My LLC came out of the IRS disclosure process clean. Amended returns filed. Bank fraud case logged. The account is fully under my control with new everything. Rita audits my books quarterly now, costs me an extra $1,200 a year, worth every dollar. The thing I keep coming back to is how patient he was. 3 years, methodical. He had watched me build my business, listened to me talk about it at family dinners, sat in my home, and then looked at my LLC and saw a useful tool. He used me as a mechanism. He wasn't targeting me out of hatred. He just looked at what I'd built and saw a way to make his scheme cleaner. That's a different kind of awful. Diane had a hard few months. Watching your brother turn out to be someone you didn't know, that grief is real, and I'm not going to minimize it. We went to couples therapy for 6 sessions, not because we were in trouble, but because we both agreed the situation deserved more than kitchen table conversations. Those sessions helped. She said something during one of them that stayed with me. She said, "I keep thinking I should have seen it, and then I remember that he fooled my dad too, and my dad built the whole company." That was the moment she stopped blaming herself. Diane and Preston are still technically in contact. She texted him on his birthday. He responded. That's about as far as it goes. I don't control her relationship with her brother. She's an adult who gets to make her own choices. What I know is that she has never once asked me to forgive him, never pushed me to smooth things over, never made me feel like the problem was me. That matters more than I can say. I picked up 2 new clients this year, a commercial development group and a private contractor who came through a referral. The business is doing better than it was before any of this. I've thought about whether I should be bothered by the fact that this nightmare is what finally pushed me to get my books in serious order, to get a real accountant, to put real controls in place. I'm not bothered. You take the lesson where you find it. I skipped the Hartley family 4th of July. Not out of anger, I just needed some space. Diane understood. We went camping instead, just the 2 of us up near the reservoir. Cooked on a camp stove, read books, didn't talk about any of this for 3 full days. One of the better weekends I've had in a long time. So here's where things stand. My LLC is clean. My name is clear. A man who stole $184,000 from his own father's company is making $4,000 in monthly payments to me for the next 2+ years. Gerald's business is running with real oversight. My marriage is solid. Was I wrong for going to a lawyer instead of handling it inside the family? For letting the legal process run even when it put pressure on everyone around me. For not giving Preston the private second chance his mother and his friends all said he deserved. I don't think so, but I want to hear what you think. What would you have done in my position?